What we're covering today in this webinar is that the things that should be able to take away is kind of going through the process of evaluating the impact of digital marketing. Akram will go through best practices each step of the way, maybe even introduce some tools that enhance the process and make it efficient. So those are kind of the takeaways that you should be able to take with you after having been watching this webinar together with us. I'll take us through the couple of first steps, like the process, which obviously is kind of like a self-evident. You set your goals, you gather your data, you do the processing of your data, you run the analysis, you do the reporting, and after that it's obviously time for the decision making. So the actual process is kind of self-evident, but we'll go through it step by step to give you sort of more insight on each step of the way. Beginning with the goal setting. So what is the kind of underlying most important target when you start doing this kind of analysis? Is obviously the what are the marketing activities that produce the best results for you? And in order for you to kind of get there, there's a couple of underlying questions that you need to kind of figure out before you get everything started. So what is for whom are you doing this? What are your main stakeholders? What are their expectations? What do they expect to get out of this? What answers do they want to have like answered for them? What is their own role in all of this? What are the measures of success is another important question. So figuring out, do you want to kind of place or measure your success based on sales results, or is it leads in your marketing coming out from your marketing? Is it conversion rates? Is it something else? Akram will touch that issue later on in the presentation in a more deeper way. And then finally, what is the scope of all this? I mean, for example, are we doing this on a company level? Are we doing this by divisions? Are we doing this by geographies? So what are the kind of scopes or underlying kind of like ways of looking at the reports and stuff? So those are basically the main questions that we kind of like to define before we enter into all of this. Looking at shortly about data gathering and processing of the data. The common thing with kind of like between InlineMarket and Causalytics here is that we both kind of like to look into both sales and marketing data sets to combine them into a common joint data platform, a warehouse solution, if you like. I would kind of like to touch this a little bit from the sales data perspective. I leave it to Akram to talk more about the marketing, digital marketing data and the analysis driven from that side of the equation. But when it comes to basic sales data, what you have usually and what we digest from the customer CRM systems and other systems are the contact and sales qualified leads, firmographic data, which is kind of describing the company demographics, the sales opportunities in your pipeline, what kind of actions have you done on your sales opportunities, and which is really crucial, we always need to look at the won and lost sales cases in order to do the kind of analysis that we do on the sales side of things. And that kind of leads us to doing or answering the basic analytic questions of, for example, who are your ideal customers? What are your ideal customers made of? Which leads should you nurture forward? Talking about marketing leads here. And eventually, what sales opportunities in my pipeline should I be focusing on? Kind of helping the company to focus on the right, most prominent sales deals in their pipeline. So those are kind of the questions that we derive from the sales data side of the equation. Obviously, we enrich that with marketing data as needed. And when it comes to what Causalytics does on the other side, I'm pretty sure that you guys would also like to kind of start from the marketing data, but also enrich and capitalize on the sales data as much as possible, and all the data sets that I've been describing here. But without further introduction to the marketing side of things, I'll leave it to Akram to take over. So the floor is yours, Akram.
Yeah, thanks, Ari. So yeah, I'll take over from here basically, and to continue on what you were saying. Indeed, so we're not necessarily segregating or separating between sales and marketing data. Both are important, obviously. And the idea is that what we are trying to understand and optimize is marketing data, and what we're trying to achieve or what we're trying to the result that we're aiming at would be more seen into the sales data. That's kind of how we like to see it. And so that basically to sum up this part, the idea here is to also uh, have both these sets into one data platform, be it InlineMarket, Causalytics, or something that basically uses both the perspectives to, on one side, get the analytics data, as mentioned here, it's sessions, demographics, goal completions and conversions, things like that, that you'll find into any analytic tool like Google Analytics. And then the digital marketing campaign data that you would then find into tools like Google Ads or Facebook Ads or other platforms that you're using for your digital marketing. And so um, the idea is to gather all this important data so that we can actually then jump to the next step, and the next step being the data analysis. So what we're basically going to do here is take all that information, and from a uh, marketing perspective, these questions are asked like, what channels contribute the most to sales? Then what content works for what channel, and how does the customer behave cross-channel? So the idea here is to actually understand or combine the various data points that we have to actually get what we would call then insights on understanding from a result point of view, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, how to choose that, but what contributes the best or what channel contributes the most to sales? Do we want to focus more then on Facebook or search ads or some emailing campaigns or webinars like this, for example, or whatever? And so understanding that piece is crucial. Then the second level of analysis is understanding what content works for what channel. So all the channels that we mentioned earlier, obviously then depending on those channels, there might be some content types or some actual content that works best or that we can notice from the data that works best for these channels. And the last question that I asked here is, how does the customer behave cross-channel? So basically here we take a step further in actually analyzing how do these channels all work together in the customer journey, and how does the customer actually interact with these different channels each time, and how does that all lead to the result that we're seeking. So when we're talking about these types of analysis, there's one thing that we have to kind of really understand is the attribution. So for all this, we require attribution. And simply put, what attribution is that um, it's a way to understand, or it's a model or models to understand which touch points or marketing channels receive credit for a result in case of a conversion or whatever else. Then how do we say that this client actually came thanks to a Google ad, for example? And here I chose basically four um, models that are more relevant for bigger companies, longer sales cycles, mainly for B2B companies. Of course, there's a little bit more or a couple more models in that, but those are the ones that I wanted to focus. And really quickly dive into. So there's the linear, time decay, position-based, and custom attribution models. So in the linear type of attribution modeling, it's more or less self-evident is that what we do is we check all the touch points that the client had with us, and we attribute the same percentage of impact, let's say, to all of them similarly. So they are equal. So this is basically how to say it gives a balanced look at the whole marketing strategy rather than focusing on one channel or one activity per se. Then time decay. In a similar fashion, here it doesn't give to each channel exactly the same percentage of importance, but the percentage of importance actually goes higher and higher the closer you get to the conversion. So the more the latest action that the customer did is the one that we think or we judge that it contributed more to the conversion. Then position based takes this logic and kind of split it a little bit. So we take the first as being crucial and the last as being crucial, and everything that is in between, we kind of give them equal contribution. And then custom, which is interesting. And then the custom one is like really from trying to understand your journey and having a lot of data and analyzing that, and then deciding that, okay, from the various researches that we did, these are the different points where how our customers interact and how we found out or we think they contribute to their conversion. So this is just a quick overview, but the main point that I wanted to make here is that the idea is to keep it as simple as possible. So all these models are, as their name suggests, models, and so they don't need and they are not made to stick to the reality 100%. So you just need to choose the closest that you think is to the reality, and then use it so that it gives you some information to go on. And of course, then it's with testing that you can later on maybe decide to modify this or basically change it completely. So yeah, this is the first thing. And then all of this, and when we talk about attribution, there's one point that we keep on mentioning, which is sales or results or conversion or whatever. So this is basically the end goal. What do we want the client to be, or how do we measure the success of our marketing campaigns or marketing digital marketing overall? So here we have to also then decide on what do we evaluate on. So the ideal situation is that you should focus or you should use your sales numbers. So one deal, let's say, these are this is the data that actually lets you know exactly or the best result that you can achieve. Now, it's not always possible because of lack of data, because the sales cycles can be really long, and because of the deal sizes or the size of the deal is big, then obviously the sales themselves and the number of sales are not that big. So obviously there are all these things that enter into consideration. And so, of course, it's possible too, and it's fine to use other metrics to evaluate on. And the next best metric is opportunities. So the number of opportunities that you have in your pipeline, irrelevant of how they ended, is one metric. Then you move down a little bit to the sales leads, then to marketing leads, then to contacts, or then conversions that you have in the various platforms. And so here, as you can see, it's a bit of a downward logic, and ideally you start from the top and you basically use the one where you have the most data. Now, the only, and all of them work, I would say, as long as they do have value there. So when I mention conversions, for example, then keep in mind always to actually give a value to your conversions, whatever these conversions are. So the only thing that I would recommend not to really base your analysis on would be these what we call vanity metrics. That's why I put them in the trash here. So the vanity metrics are things like uh, number of sessions of visitors or clicks, for example, from ads and things like that. Uh, those are not really what you want to evaluate your success on, because then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, the conversions, contacts, marketing leads, sales leads, opportunities, or sales dues. So yeah, this is on uh, the analysis part. Now the next step of the process, evaluating your marketing activities would be, or digital marketing activities would be, the reporting. So the main idea with reporting is to understand who are you reporting to and what do they expect to see. So they are going to make decisions based on that. And so the idea is to understand who they are and what do they need. I took some examples here to show you. In a fairly large company, then you have to identify those internal personas or reporting personas. Um, they could be UX designers, marketing managers, commerce managers, content creator, product managers, strategists, and executives, and each one of them actually has a certain goal. So if we talk about the marketing managers, for example, then they are primarily interested in the return on investment on their marketing activities, understanding which ones should they focus on. And if we take from the other end, the strategists and executives, then they are actually concerned with everything more or less, but then on a higher level. And they do want to understand the trend. They do want to understand the key initiatives that have been starting, for example, and how they performed. They do want to understand budgeting wise and cost wise how it is doing in terms of results. So this is a quick overview, and of course the next thing is to understand what KPIs then are important for them. So depending on what they actually would like to hear, what they are interested in, then the reporting should be personalized to give them that. So I take again these examples that I mentioned before. So the marketing managers, I'll add the content creators and strategists and executives. So as I mentioned, the marketing managers are interested in the return on investment, and so there's the key, the KPI they are interested in is the return on marketing investment per channel, so that they compare between the channels and they can actually make decision between what should we focus on and what not. And then they do want to understand the sales numbers or the sales generated thanks to their marketing activities. And the last two things, of course, as I mentioned, the custom attribution earlier. So they do also want to understand attribution. They do want to try to kind of tweak this and understand if the model is really close to reality or not, so that they actually get better results next time. And the user behavior, obviously, then that has an impact on how they perform their marketing. And on the other end of the spectrum, then we have the executives. Again, as I mentioned, the most important KPIs for them are trend type of KPIs. What has been the impact of their key initiatives? Are there specific campaigns that they were interested in or had like a strategic goal, for example, and then understanding how these are doing? And of course, the overall return on marketing investment on the digital market. So this was the reporting, and the last piece basically then is about decision making. So when we talk about evaluating the digital marketing, it's decision making is not necessarily 100% included. So I wanted to include it here because that's at the end of the day what we want to do the evaluation for. And basically, the key pointers that I wanted to mention in the decision making is that it does require resources and intelligence. So it's something that, well, someone or something has to look into the analysis, to the result of the analysis, and actually has to come up with ideas, decide what do we do next. So what are the actions that we need to take on the report? So this is something that obviously requires resources and intelligence. Then with all of this, the way to do that is um, always trying to find, or the type of decisions that usually come up is finding the best combinations of who to target in which channels and with what content. You can add a lot of other things like at what time, in what location, with what format, whatever. But yeah, so by combining these different results from the analysis, we could come up with various ideas. And what we do with these ideas is ideally have couple of hypotheses and test them as quickly as possible and rapidly experiment them, and then get this cycle over and over again to understand and make different decisions and modify. And the last piece in the decision making, obviously, you need to focus on actions or decisions that lead to the target result. So if the target result that we're talking about is increasing sales, obviously, then that's what the decisions need to lead to. So that was basically the process, and my last slide would kind of summarize a little bit all of that by talking about InlineMarket and Causalytics and what we're doing. So as you could see, this 5-step, or summarized in 5-step process, is something that hopefully will lead you to understanding your digital marketing better and make decisions that will help optimize that. And what we do with inline marketing Causalytics is that we work together to automate this process. So I mentioned resources, I mentioned intelligence, and I said someone or something. And inline marketing Causalytics is the something that can actually help you go through each of these steps in a efficient, automated way. And basically, that's what we do. And I think I'm over, so I'll give it back to Ari.
Thanks, Akram. I was about to say right on time, but yeah, 1 minute is forgiven. Don't worry about it. I don't see any kind of questions in the chat so far. I have one question for you, which I kind of came up during your presentation. When you talked about the metrics, you mentioned that sales and sales opportunities are kind of like the most good kind of objectives or metrics to use. But why is it that still so often you kind of see the companies using these vanity metrics like visitors and clicks and stuff like that? Is it just because the marketing and sales are still in their own silos and the companies don't see the whole picture, or have the kind of link between the data between those two, or what is the reason in your opinion?
Yeah, I would say that's a really good question. First of all, yeah, silos are one explanation, definitely. And I would say also that it depends on the level of the analysis. And so, if you're doing vanity, or you're basing your analysis on the vanity metric level, then you're not on the right level. There might be some people and some things that you could do by trying to understand these vanity metrics. Okay, someone who's really solely responsible of the website would want to get as many people on the website as possible. But from a company perspective, then they want this website not to bring them visitors. They want this website to, at the end of the day, bring them more business. And so I think, yeah, it's more on about who sets the goal, or if even a goal is set in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
And so yeah, that's
got it. I think it kind of goes back to the one of the first things that we mentioned here is the stakeholders. Figure out who are your stakeholders and what are the main important questions for them. What keeps them awake at night, as one usually says. So yeah, get it.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thanks, Akram. I don't see any other questions at the chat for now. So I think we were kind of preemptive in our presentation. So just to wrap things up, a pointer that we will be doing yet another webinar in October, and focus there will be on one of the kind of most important or key questions that we typically get from our customers when we talk about sales data, and that's obviously like the questions of, is my sales data enough? Do you have enough sales data? How much is enough sales data? And is my sales data good enough for this kind of data analytics? So we decided to give you some kind of indications and guidelines on what is good enough sales data, basically. So that will be the topic of our coming October webinar, and we will let you know more about that quite soon now. So please do join us in October as well. So thanks a lot, Akram. It was a pleasure having you here, and it was a great presentation, and I think the audience and myself enjoyed it very much. So thank you.
Likewise, thank you for the invitation again, and well, hope to do this again another time.
Absolutely. So thanks, everyone. See you in October.